Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what is hopefully my last take, as I screwed up the first one and wasn't recording the second time. On this reply video, I posted some comments on YouTube and on Reddit also about the two small form factor PCs I built for VR. People ask questions, ask for photos, wanted details and stuff. So I decided to shoot a video. I've been thinking about doing this for a while, but I promised that I would try to do this weekend. So this is unscripted and off the cuff, so please pardon the unprofessionalism, but then again, you probably shouldn't expect more than that. This is the first one. I built this because I got tired of lugging my big 50-pound Lian Li PC011. Sorry, there's a big bright light up top. I'm using that at my room. Water-cooled build 9900K that is sporting a 1080 Ti. Problem is, it's just too heavy. I like to take VR to friends' houses or sometimes my sister's house on the opposite coast, and that is a pain. And I really don't want to drop it because that would be very, very bad. So finally decided to try something new and build a small form factor PC. I've always been hesitant because usually you have to make compromises on the hardware to get it to fit and be cool enough. This case officially supports a 240 AIO, officially with one fan for some reason. There's a bracket that goes in here that I'll show you where that holds 3.5 inch spinning disk hard drive or 1 or 2 2.5 inch SSDs. Remove that because I don't need a hard drive. I haven't built a PC with a hard drive in it since 2016. That was my first real build in a while, and that had just like 4 SSDs. And with SSD prices today, I'd rather not deal with one if I don't have to. So I removed it. This had a grill here with holes in it because that's where hard drives go so it could breathe. I cut that out so it won't interfere with the fan very much. Some people leave it in. I just cut it out. Had I done this correctly and knew where I needed it to be exactly, I would have left this and then taken rid of that and just left a bar here. But there was grill here, and ended up cutting it out. After I fit it, I figured, well, hindsight's 2020. In the future, if I do it again in a case like this, I know what I need to do. Anyway, I needed to drill my own holes for my 280 AIO, which I got a EVGA CLC 280 because it's good performance, and you can find them at really good prices every so often. I think this one I paid $90 for over like Black Friday or something like that, and that is really hard to beat with any other AIO. All the other ones might have fancy LEDs, but you're not going to see it, and I'm not a big LED guy, although I'm warming up a little bit to it. So I drilled my own holes. As you can see, there's extra holes. These are the original holes here, these smaller ones for a 240. I drilled these holes, but it was too far this way, and I bumped into my rear fan, which when I first measured, I didn't have a rear fan in there. But once I put one in, which I didn't account for, I could not close it. There's 3 screws that hold this in place. 1, 2, 3. This one I removed and never put back in just because I was in and out quite often making adjustments and stuff, so I figured I don't need 2 screws, not to deal with the third one. So I drilled my own holes. What I did is I took a piece of paper, I put it over the radiator, the back of the radiator, the other side. I used a pencil to sketch it out, and it left marks of where the holes go, so I had an idea. Then I put it over here, indented it so I knew where my drill needed to drill. It was rough to make because the paper moves a little bit, so I drilled the holes big enough where I can hopefully get it to work. There's no screw here because I'd have to cut out just a little bit of that edge, and that's kind of difficult and a pain in the butt to do, and I figured it's not worth it. It doesn't need it, so I left it like that. But I drilled the other holes and got them to go. Pull this out. Here's my hose. Big recommendation is to go with SFF power supply. It's more expensive, but I could not get this to fit with a regular, even with a recommended 140. You can use 140 millimeter ATX power supply if it's not modular, and mine was modular. And I don't want to have it non-modular because then I'd have to stick a bunch of cables that I may not use in there. I want SFX, much happier. A lot more room for airflow, a lot more room for this tubing, and you can definitely easily fit a video card. This is where I ran into my first issue, getting the video card to fit, because I'll show you here on my PC. Sorry about that. I could not get the back of the video card to clear the motherboard. There's a little space between the motherboard and the case. And the reason I could not do that is because it would hit the slip of the case and I could not get to slide behind the motherboard. So originally what I did was, a lot of other people do, I saw people comment, is they bent the rear I/O in such a way that they could fit it in. This was what I did with my original 1080 that I had in there, and then when I upgraded to the 2080 Ti, I ended up just cutting it, which I regretted later, because at first I thought I had issues with my card, knew I would not take a return, and thanks to Asus, thank you Asus, they actually, after contacting them a few times, they sent me a new rear I/O shield once they located one. It took a couple weeks, but I got it, and I'm very happy. Thank you Asus for that. I know it's an unusual request, but they did it. And I just put it in about an hour ago and fit the card in, because I modded this so that I don't have to worry about that issue any longer. So this is what I would recommend instead of cutting your I/O. Close this up. If you can see here, I cut with a dermal a space here, instead of being one solid piece that goes in and hinders my clearance from my PSU. By cutting this, I can slide in my PSU now, my GPU, and have no issues. So that was solved. Highly recommended if you can use a full-size video card and have issues getting it in. Next issue I had was when I upgraded from my 1080 to my 2080 Ti, which is, if you look here, a much thicker card. You go from about a 2 slot card to a 2.7 card slot, which means that the bottom fans that I had in there originally to keep it cool could no longer fit in the bottom of the case, and that does hinder your temperatures. I was hitting in my 2080 Ti, I was having benchmark, let it run for a while, I was getting into the low 80s, and that's not ideal at all. So what I did was, considering my options were limited, was I actually mounted the fans to the bottom of the case on the outside. Yes, it looks a little ridiculous. Looks a little bit like some kind of a Star Wars droid, maybe. But what I've done since is I cut a piece of Kydex that I had, so that I could place it right in front of the fans. It's kind of a preliminary fit to see how it works, and I think it works out well. Hides it, and most people can't tell if you don't point it out to them. In the future, if I decide to actually invest some time into it, I might get something that's not so. A little thicker Kydex, maybe a little darker so it blends in a little better. Put it in form, fit it perfectly to fit, and no one will know the better. So now it doesn't look quite as ugly, and I get all the performance. So that was my other modification. Next comes, since I'm using the wireless Vive, and there's only one PCIe slot, of course, in a ITX motherboard, I needed to come up with a solution. My solution was to use the rear NVMe M.2 slot to plug in, there we go, one of these. So you plug this into your M.2 slot. Got a cable that goes into a by 16 PCIe. Well, not really by 16 because this is only by 4, but that's all you need for that. There were smaller ones that would fit this because that's all I need is a small one, but they were shorter and I needed to run from the back to the front. there was not enough room in the back of the motherboard and the case to bend this without me feeling uncomfortable with how much it was bent. So I just ran it all the way in front of the audio I/O over here and then this way. Double-sided tape, or not really tape, it's more 3M double-sided tape, which is really thick, to put this in place. Eventually I'll put this some on here so it'll stick once I'm happy with this placing. And yeah, then I ran one of these. I bought one of these on eBay. I think it was like a 6-inch. I think there's like 6 or 8-inch or something like that. So I ran one from here to here. Drill the hole back here. There's a screw, so once you drill the hole, you can screw it into place, and then I can connect my transmitter from the back of the case, so I can use it with my wireless 5. There's also comes with a power cable. You connect it just to a SATA power right here into that, so make sure you can power it. I'm not sure if it needs it or if the connector itself can power it, but I plugged it in because that's what they recommend. So there you go, and it works. I used it last night for a couple hours until my battery died. My battery hadn't been charged, so it didn't last but maybe 2 hours, and it worked perfectly fine. I was perfectly happy with playing wireless Vive VR with this thing. So that was another solution that worked out great. It looks a little funny, but for its purposes, it is perfect. Point out that in order to close the case, I couldn't put these cables up like this because it would bump into this, so I had to smush these down and keep these down so that I could close the case and it wouldn't interfere with this or the side panel, but that's not a big deal. I have 6 fans in here, 2 on the bottom blowing air in to help the GPU cool and get cooler air into the case. Top knock to a fan is blowing air in over the VRMs and keeping the area cool. The front and rear fans are both set to exhaust. The radiator's also set to exhaust, and that's because you've got to get the hot air out because it's just small cramped space, and it's important to get the hot air out. So that's what I did. Exhaust, exhaust, intake, intake, intake. I have an 80mm fan that I'll show you later. It's up here because I could not fit a 120 the way my PSU is oriented, and that's set to exhaust. I believe it's exhaust. It could be either way. I tried it both ways. I don't think there's much of a difference, but right now it's at exhaust. Here you go. Oh, and one of these is a 92mm, the other one's an 80. I think this is an 80, I think this is a 92, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. That's what it fits, so I went with what fits perfectly in. And let me close this up. And you can, woo, kind of blurry. Oof, I gotta go see if that was blurry. I'm gonna have to shoot this again. That's what the bottom fans look like. There's only one screw here right now, so it does this, but eventually I'll figure out where it needs to go, drill a hole, maybe get a second screw in there, or use some double-sided tape. But this is my preliminary fix to see if that would help with the cooling of the GPU, and it does. I mean, generally I'm at, during gaming, the highest I've seen is 69, maybe 70 on a really hot day. Before I was hitting into the 80s, like 82. Actually, no, I think it was higher than, no, 82. The 85 was the Ryzen Tech with the side panel on, which that's for a different video. But considering all the hardware in here, this has got, well, with that new video card, it's got more performance than my big PC, and that's a big water-cooled 360 open loop. Doesn't include the GPU, but still. Let me just take this out and show you the top view. Now, they say you can use an ITX power supply, but like I said, that really limits your GPU, your water cool, your open AIO cooler. It takes so much bigger. The only issue with, go this way, with doing it this way is since this plug, generally I think they want one that's over here on this side. Then you can fit a 120mm fan up here. But since the orientation of this SFX power supply, which is a Corsair SF750, it's over here, I cannot get that 120mm. So I put an 80mm fan, just literally put those things on the feet to give a little bit of space, just placed it right there up towards this corner, which is okay because in that corner here, it can draw air from here a little bit to help exhaust some warm air. So that's what I did. Or you can turn it as an intake. Not sure which one is better, what difference it makes, but I left it as an exhaust. I've tried them both ways, didn't notice much difference. And that is my Deep Cool 4-fan hub. I got 3 fans on this one and 3 fans on the bottom, one on the bottom inside the case for the 6 fans that are in here. And give me a second. Make sure these wires go back in nice and cleanly without hitting the fan. Basically, temperatures for the CPU. Now, if I haven't said it yet, I live in South Florida, which is very warm, even during the quote-unquote winter. Winter for us is, some days of cool weather and some days of what we would consider actually cold weather, and some days of just not being hot, just being kind of okay. So we don't really have winter in South Florida. You get some cold days. If we're lucky, it lasts more than a week, maybe 2 if we're really lucky. Otherwise, it's sporadically cooler weather. And my room upstairs is really warm, just because it's an addition and it's a big rectangle and the sun hits it all day long. And the AC does not cool up here very well. So my temperatures are going to be above what most people will see. But while gaming, I can hit right now, I might get into the 80, 82 sometimes, but generally I'm closer to the high 70s. My GPU, 68, 69, I'm sorry. Yeah, 68, 69. If it gets really warm, it might get into the 70, 71. During the summer months, I haven't experienced that yet, but I would imagine it might get a little bit warmer, a couple degrees probably, simply because it's just so hot. Luckily, I'm not here during the day, so I can't use it, which means it doesn't have to suffer through that really hot stuff. At night, it's a little more tolerable, but it's still quite warm upstairs. The fans help me cool off, but the ambient is still quite high, so the components are going to reflect that. But even then, if I get into the mid-80s, it's manageable. It's not the end of the world. It's not always there. It just spikes up there. But so far, performance has been great. And next, we'll talk about the Ryzen Tech build, which is very similar in the components. The same AIO, same CPU. It's got my older video card, so it's not quite as powerful. Hopefully that'll change in the future, but that's going to require a little modification in that case. But anyway, that's it. If there's anything I forgot, anything you want to know, feel free to ask questions. I'll try to reply, at least for the first few weeks. After that, you're probably going to lose track of any questions, but if it pops up, I'll try to answer them for those that are interested in something like this. Anyway, again, this is a nice little case, and for the money, $50, hard to beat what you can put in here and what it can do. Especially if you're willing to do a little bit of modification. There's something I forgot, which I should mention. Since I removed the internal hard drive bracket, because I put the AIO in, the only other drive space is right here. There's a space for my, you can see it right through the grill, my MX500 2TB SSD. It's my game drive. You can just screw it right into there, which is great, but that's only one drive. So originally, and I've taken it out because now it's in my Ryzen Tech, but eventually I'll put it back in here once I get a 2TB for that, is I cut this hole. Put that tape down. I taped it up preliminary now so that it won't, I was afraid it might cut the cable or something, so I put a little bit of tape there. I cut this hole, and I can get an angle connector, and then I can fit an SSD like I had before right in here. You might be able to fit 2 side by side if you come out like this, but that it's a little more visible once you put this in, because this only covers so much, and it might show a little bit. I'm not sure, and I would probably have to make this wider, make this a bit wider so that I could have more space for the cables. But it might be possible. But I think 1 would suffice. You know, worst comes to worst, prices are coming down. You might get another 2 terabyte, and that should be plenty. But for now, eventually I'm gonna put a 1 terabyte in here. So I'll have 2 SSD plus the one that's on the motherboard. So it's a total of 3 SSDs. Suffice from a gaming PC. Alright, now I'm truly finished. And next I'll shoot my second video on my Ryzen Tech, which I had to reshoot. So we'll talk about that a little bit, how they compare. Maybe I'll make another video if people are interested on comparing them and see which one, you know, might be the better option. Anyway, this video's been long enough. Apparently it's like 21 minutes. Holy cow. Sorry about that. Any questions, ask, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.